Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Barkowski with the REL Southwest at the American Institutes for Research, and we're excited to have you join us today for the webinar entitled Grow Your Own Program from State Education Agency to School District to Student Outcomes. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. As you all know, we are on the webinar today through Zoom. Attendees are in listen-only mode, and the sound should be coming through your computer speakers. If you'd like to listen using your phone, you can find the dial-in information by clicking the audio option, as noted in the image here on the slide on the bottom left-hand side of your Zoom control panel. If you have questions about Zoom logistics, or if you have questions for our presenters, you can direct all your questions using the chat feature. In order for everyone to see your chat messages, you can please make sure to ensure that the to section on the chat says everyone, so that you are sending your chats to everyone and not just hosts or panelists, so everyone can see your questions. We also have automated captions available, which you can activate on your screen by clicking on the up symbol next to the CC Live Transcript button at the beginning, or I'm sorry, at the bottom right-hand side of your Zoom. And then you can select Show Subtitles. If you are having issues with that, again, and you need help, just type your question or your help need in the chat. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded. We will paste a notice about the recording in the chat, which you also received in your confirmation email. So we will go ahead and get started with the webinar presentation. So first, before we dive into the content about Grow Your Own programs around the country and specifically in Texas and Tennessee, we'd like to give a brief overview of REL Southwest. REL Southwest, or otherwise known as the Regional Educational Laboratory Southwest, is part of a network of 10 regional education laboratories that are funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute for Education Sciences, or IES. The REL Southwest works with stakeholders across the region, and you can see those states on the map on the slide. And the goal of the RELs is to meaningfully improve student outcomes by working with stakeholders in those states. We conduct the REL work in partnership with stakeholders in the 5 states in our region, which include Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. And REL Southwest conducts its work primarily through collaborative research partnerships with districts, state education agencies, policymakers, and other educational stakeholders in the region. And these partnerships focus on high leverage education issues that our partners and others in the field have identified as priorities. And through the work in the current REL Southwest, this idea and need came up related to Grow Your Own. So that was the impetus for this webinar. So today during the webinar, we have 3 outcomes. First is to allow our participants and allow you to learn more about Grow Your Own teacher programs, including learning about the Texas Education Agency's program. We'll hear from the Texas Education Agency, or TEA's, Ronald Coleman, to learn about Texas's program. We also hope you'll learn about the federal centers, including the REL and the Region 14 Comprehensive Center, and how both of those centers have supported TEA in its Grow Your Own work. After a brief Q&A, we'll then learn about how 3 school districts approach, implement, and support their GYO programs. And we'll end the webinar with a longer Q&A session to provide the audience members with opportunities to ask questions of our presenters. And again, as the webinar progresses, if you have questions that come up, please type those questions in the chat box. And we may answer them in the moment, but we may also reserve those questions to the Q&A section. And at the end of the webinar, we have a feedback survey that'll be sent to all attendees via email after the webinar. So I'd like to briefly introduce our presenters. Our presenters today include Ron Coleman, as I mentioned, who is an educator recruitment and development specialist at TEA, or the Texas Education Agency. We also have Darcy Pietryka, who is a senior study director at Westat, who runs the Region 14 Comprehensive Center. We also have Lisa Laughlin, who is the director of the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders at AIR, who will facilitate some of our discussions today. And to represent the districts joining us, we are very fortunate to have Shawn Mason, who is the former superintendent of Crosbyton CISD in Texas. And they are currently working with Texas Tech University at the West Texas Rural Education Partnership and working on Grow Your Own programs. Next, we have two representatives from Goose Creek CISD in Texas. Lisa Steele is the Director of Talent Acquisition and Development at Goose Creek, and Jade Cox is a CTE specialist for public services in the Goose Creek CISD. And then finally, we're joined by Jesse Gray, who is the Strategic Partnerships Coordinator and Grow Your Own Programs Manager in Hamilton County Schools in Tennessee. Great, so we'll hear from all these presenters in a moment, but first, I would like to first present a brief overview of Grow Your Own programs to talk about what they are. So I'll dive in and then I'll turn it over to our other presenters. So to start out, what are Grow Your Own programs? I know everyone on this webinar has likely heard the term or seen articles or other information out there on Grow Your Own programs. And what these programs intend to do is to essentially allow or provide opportunities for school districts and other partners to literally grow their own teachers by pulling in teachers from within the community, or teacher candidates rather, from within the populations that are already engaged and being served by the community, and to recruit those individuals from within with the idea that these individuals are already living in communities and they may be more likely to be well suited to teach in those communities since they are community members. And there are three ways that Grow Your Own programs typically recruit individuals into the teaching profession, but not limited to these three, by targeting high school students and providing high school students with introductions to the teaching profession to interest them in entering the teaching profession and pursuing a teaching certificate in college and beyond. Grow Your Own programs also target career changers, often partnering with organizations or corporations or other entities within the community. And then finally, a lot of Grow Your Own programs target paraprofessionals or educational aides who are already working in schools and already working in classrooms to provide those individuals with the college credit hours, the teacher preparation programs, and the certification to bring those individuals into the teaching profession. So these are three ways in which Grow Your Own programs are implemented, but what exactly is Grow Your Own? And on the next couple slides, I have a little bit from the research and from a national scan of Grow Your Own programs across the country. So to give a more formalized definition of Grow Your Own, we have some snippets here from some recent publications that have examined Grow Your Own programs across the country. And one of those publications have defined Grow Your Own programs as a localized approach to develop a pipeline of educator candidates to meet local workforce needs. And I think the term local here is really important, because Grow Your Own programs do and are tailored and customized to local needs. So what works in one locale may not work in the others, but these programs do have a lot of common tenets and practices that we'll discuss today. Grow Your Own programs in policy, in literature, are distinguished from other pipelines that prepare, recruit, and bring in teacher candidates into the profession. So Grow Your Own programs, again, often target populations that aren't always or aren't necessarily targeted by teacher preparation programs. Again, by targeting those career changers, targeting high school students while they're still in school. And again, being a little more creative and kind of expanding what we may otherwise think of as a pool or a pipeline to get teacher candidates into the teaching profession. And as I alluded to earlier, Grow Your Own programs often leverage partnerships in communities to help them succeed. So local education agencies or school districts often partner with state education agencies, oftentimes to receive funding and guidance around Grow Your Own. Districts often partner with preparation programs, teachers' unions, and other entities. And we'll learn a little more about that later when we hear from our district presenters. So I'd like to just touch briefly on why Grow Your Own to discuss or describe the need and why these programs came about. And as you know, a lot of us have been familiar with teacher recruitment and teacher turnover challenges, especially those that have been intensified by the COVID-19 pandemic. We also know that around the country, and again, this may be specific to particular districts or states or locales, but educator shortages, of course. We have common areas of educator shortages, oftentimes STEM, for example, teachers of English learners and teachers of special education students. But districts may have specific needs to fill specific teaching populations that Grow Your Own programs can address. And in the last couple of years, there has been a lot in the policy and research and practitioner communities about diversifying the workforce. And by recruiting candidates from these populations that may not traditionally be the target of recruitment efforts of teacher preparation programs, these Grow Your Own programs can, in fact, bring in teachers and teacher candidates from different racial, ethnic background, other cultural background factors that may help them teach students in those communities. I'm going to skip that slide quickly, but I did want to make a couple more points here before I turn it over to our next presenter, and to summarize a little more from the research literature on Grow Your Own. Research has found that there are some primary elements of Grow Your Own programs that do contribute to the success of those programs, including those strong partnerships that I mentioned to ensure that all of the organizations that impact or affect or facilitate the teacher workforce are at the table. Another successful component of Grow Your Own programs are having targeted selection and recruitment efforts to target those populations that are very well suited or well positioned in the community to become teachers. Having the curriculum and clinical experience placements, in addition to the teacher preparation training and coursework, is often very important to give teacher candidates that kind of on the ground experience. And then finally, having a sustainable funding model. A lot of these programs are funded through grants, but having sustainability, not just with funding, but from the programmatic side is important. And finally, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, just based on time. We will provide the slides after on the REL Southwest website. So any slides we do go through quickly or skip or you'd like to refer back to will be posted in the next couple weeks. But going back to this kind of why Grow Your Own question, Grow Your Own is being used as a solution to some common challenges that I've already mentioned that a lot of districts are facing across the country, including educator shortages. Grow Your Own programs that are well designed and well implemented can in fact bring in teachers who do tend to remain in teaching longer than the typical beginning teacher, particularly in urban and rural schools and schools that tend to have higher rates of turnover. I mentioned earlier as well that Grow Your Own can help fill shortages in critical subject areas or grade levels. And there is some research there that shows strong connections between GYO and effectively addressing shortages in high need areas. Grow Your Own can also be used as a solution, as I mentioned earlier, to diversifying the teacher workforce. And then finally, hard to staff contexts, bringing in teachers in districts that might otherwise struggle to recruit from outside their communities. So again, recruiting from within to fill some of those needs, particularly in rural districts, which I think some of our presenters will talk about a little later on.